So I made a post about how one can't be curious and judgmental at the same time when conversating with their spouse. So if you are judgmental, then you're not being curious. They can't coexist. Okay. The post was received quite well. It's still on my page. You can go have a look at it. But a lot of people reached out to me and said, hey, like this is all cool. And, you've taught us a lot. It's opened my eyes. But how does this look like? What are some tips? What do we say to show curiosity? In this video, I'll show you how to, or questions that you can ask while you're listening. So that's the first part. And then the second part would be statements to explore feelings and needs as you're listening. And then the last part, the third part, would be statements that express empathy and understanding and validation as you listen. So these three parts are what curiosity are made up of. So the first part is questions to ask as you listen. Questions that show that you're curious. And then statements to explore feelings and needs. So you want to explore more, you want to go deeper. That shows curiosity as well. And then how to express empathy and validation. And that also, shows that you are curious. Okay, so we'll start off with questions you can ask as you listen. I'm not going to mention them with numbers. I'm just going to mention them. You can write them down, so get your pens and paper ready. Okay, so questions to ask as you listen. What are you feeling? What are your primary needs here? How did this all evolve? Tell me more. Is there anything you want me to know? What does this mean for you? What are your choices in all of this? What are your feelings? That's some statements there. Moving forward, statements to explore feelings and needs as you're listening. Okay. Tell me the story of that. I want to know everything you're feeling. Talk to me, I'm listening. Nothing is more important to me right now than listening to you. We have lots of time to talk. Help me understand your feelings a little better. Tell me more. Help me understand this situation from your point of view. Were there mixed emotions? I'd like to hear about them. It is okay not to know what to do here. What's your guess? What would you like to happen? So that's statements to explore feelings and needs. And now moving on to statements that express empathy and validation as you listen. That makes sense to me. I would feel the same if I went through the same situation. This must be very difficult for you. That sounds frustrating. That sounds annoying. That would make me mad too. I agree with most of what you're saying. I understand why you are sad about this. I can see the connection that led you to feel this way. And no wonder why you're upset. Okay, so these are some statements that you can write down and try to, and you can have these in front of you as well, like, while you're having a discussion with your spouse. There's nothing wrong with having these lists in front of you and referring back to them. That's how it all starts. Practice makes progress. You got to start somewhere. So these hopefully would be a way that you can show that you are curious while you are listening. And it's important that you do show, body language. So you make eye contact. You make sure that you're not giving them your back or your side. So you actually turn towards them, right, and face them. Maybe lean a little bit forward like this. And yeah, if you need to sort of even put your, use physical touch, you can do that if they're comfortable with that. Like put your hands on their lap, on their knee, or hold their hand. These are good ways to show that you're listening. Also, well, a last piece of advice. I don't have anything scripted here. I'm just trying to think of something. I had an idea and it just went. Right, empathy. Empathy is made up of three parts. So the first part is cognitive empathy. So this is where you use your thinking, right? So you want to, it needs to make sense to you, okay? So you want to show your spouse that what they're saying is logic, that they're not crazy, right? That they're not making this up. They're not too much for you to handle. Their feelings aren't too much for you. So logic empathy or cognitive empathy is expressed in a way that it makes sense. It's got logic to it, okay? Then the second part of empathy is emotional empathy, okay? Emotional empathy is where you express the emotion, like, you know, that's so sad that happened, or I'm so sorry that happened to you. So you're showing that emotion and reflecting it to them. You can say stuff like, also for emotional empathy, I'm so sorry that happened to you, and so forth, okay? But the most important part of emotional empathy is not the words, it's that you're trying to feel what they feel. You're putting yourself in their shoes, and you're seeing the perspective or the story from their eyes, from their point of view. And you're suspending your judgment, you're suspending your point of view in that moment. Doesn't mean you have to agree. You don't need to agree to have empathy. You don't need to agree to validate. You don't need to agree to be curious, right? And when I say this to clients, they're like, "Oh, yes," especially the men. When I say this, they're like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. I can do this. I don't have to agree fully." But you don't have to agree. You can disagree partially, and still have empathy by showing the emotions. Okay, so the first part of empathy is cognitive empathy. Show that that they are not crazy, that it makes sense to you. You can see how the dots connected to those feelings that they have. Emotional empathy, so you're trying to put yourself in their shoes, you're trying to feel what they feel, and you also remember a time where you felt that way, so that way you can be more attuned with your spouse. You remember a time that you felt sad when someone took your whatever it was. If your wife or your husband or your wife is saying that they're sad because they were disrespected, then you try to remember a time that you were disrespected, and then you try to feel that with them, right? The third part of empathy is the physiological part, or the physical part. So the physiological part is the body language, right? So if your partner's sad, you don't laugh, right? That's just wrong. You might tilt your head a little bit. You might lean forward. Like, again, you might put your hand on their lap, on their knee, hold their hands. But it's also physical. You can see that impact on your body, okay? And they can see that as well. Not like, for example, they're opening up to you, telling you about they're being vulnerable, they're putting themselves out there, and you're like not giving a damn. You're like, huh? What was that? What'd you say? And you're on your phone. That's not physical empathy. That's rubbish, okay? So I hope you found this video helpful. I might break it up into reels or shorter videos, breaking up the sections, or I might not. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think.